Hi, guys. My name's Bree Bear. Thank you so much for joining me on my reading and podcast adventure here on Bree Bear's Books. While on this journey together, we will dive into books, authors, genres, and much more together. My goal for this podcast is to connect with other book lovers and review books and authors together. Maybe get some more recommendations for you guys or even for me. I first got into reading about 12 years ago. It was when I was starting middle school. I quickly grew to love books such as Maze Runner, Hunger Games, Harry Potter, Twilight, more like that. My favorite genre currently is young adult thriller, primarily Natasha Preston's young adult thriller. I have, however, recently been reading a lot of romance and dark romances. My favorite author is Natasha Preston. She's an English author. She writes both young adult thrillers and romance. She actually is the one who got me hooked on thrillers, specifically her book called The Cellar. It was intriguing from the very first page all the way to the end. Left on a little bit of a cliffhanger, but I found out she has a second book to it called Him on Wattpad, and I just haven't gotten around to reading it, but I'm definitely going to at some point. Um, at the end of 2024, my mother-in-law and I decided that we are going to do this 2025 Book of the Month challenge thing together, where we pick a book for each other or even a series, as she did for me for January. We're going to pick something for each other and we're going to read that on our own. And it's just a kind of a way to, one, broaden our perspective on books and our genres and stuff like that, because hers is a little bit different than mine, as well as getting us to be able to connect more together and have something to talk about together as well. The first book for her I chose in January of this year was called The Lost by Natasha Preston. She really seemed to enjoy it. She's talked to me while she was reading it and after she read it. She finished it in about 2 days. And then the series that she recommended for me in January was called The Shadow Children by Margaret Peterson Haddix. I really enjoyed it. It was kind of different than what I'm used to. It was more of like a preteen, teen to young adult age range. And it's basically revolving around a country where you have to have no more than 2 children. If you get pregnant with a third, then you have to either get an abortion or you have to hide your child. But if you hide your child and the population police come and find out about it, they not only kill your child, but they also lock you away in prison. And it was very interesting to see and read about. I finished that pretty quickly. She says I didn't, which I took my time on it. I really read the first book the first night that she gave it to me, and then the rest of the series I actually just finished a couple days ago. So it was more like end of January, beginning February that I finished it. But for her February book of the month, I chose another Natasha Preston book, which is actually my favorite book of all time, and it's called You Will Be Mine. It's based around a college group of friends, and they have a stalker, and then they're slowly dying one by one, and it was just really interesting the entire time. I've read it probably about 6 or 7 times now, probably even more than that. I don't even know. But every person that I end up meeting and talking to, I recommend that book. And my second favorite by her has to be The Cabin. It's definitely kept me intrigued the entire time. All of her thrillers have. I have every single one of her thrillers, including her new one, The Party, that just released. I believe it was in December. I bought it, and then I just haven't gotten around to be able to read it yet. Last month in January, I read a total of 9 books, 2 series, 4 books each, and then one Natasha Preston book that was by itself, but it is part of a series. I just reread the first book. So that one was Second Chance. As I said, that is part of a series. That's a Natasha Preston series, and it's one of her romances. It's the first book in the series, And I can't really say too much without spoiling a lot. So I'm not going to go too much in detail with it, but it's about this teenage / young adult female who is going through a lot of depression and stuff like that because her boyfriend had passed away in a horrible accident. And then her boyfriend's brother actually helps her heal through that, and then they end up together in the story, or end up falling for each other in the story and end up together. And then just something happens that ends up trying to take them apart, and she has to choose between her boyfriend's brother and something else. But I can't go much more in detail without spoiling a bunch. And as I said, that's a 3-book series. The second one I love just as much as the first one. The third kind of took me a little bit to get into just because it's from a different person's perspective. He, of course, was in the book series in the first 2. He was just one of the side character, and he becomes the main character in the third. And it just took me a little bit to readjust and realize that it's no longer this person that I'm following, it's somebody else. So that always throws me for a loop when I'm reading a book series, and it's one of the things that turns me away from a series most of the time, but it's starting to grow on me, especially with that series. And then another series that I read in January, which was the Twisted series by Ana Huang. I absolutely loved it, even though it also does the same thing that I didn't really like, but it's growing on me, where it revolves around a group of 4 friends. The first friend ends up falling in love with her brother's best friend, and they end up together, and it tells their love story in the very first book. In the second one, it is one of her friends that is falling in love with her bodyguard, and it is their story together and how they overcome things in the second one. And the third is another one of the group of the 4 in the group of friends, and her story on how she falls in love with someone as well. Actually, in the third book, it's the first female that we read about. It's her brother that is falling in love with her best friend in the third. And then in the fourth book, it is another one of the 4 girlfriends that falls in love with the owner of the building that she lives in. And it goes on and talks about their love story. So it's a different couple each book. You still hear references and see the original couples from the last books in those 4 books, but it does switch point of views and talks about that specific story in the book as you change. And then the last series I read was The Shadow Children, which I already went a little bit in detail about. That was by Margaret Peterson Haddix. I really enjoyed it, as I said. The first one I read immediately, and then I read the Twisted series by Ana Huang, and then I went back to The Shadow Children, and I read the second, third, and fourth book all together. So those were the 9 books I read in January / the first couple days of February. I don't really know quite yet what I'm going to read in February yet. I haven't gotten my book of the month from my mother-in-law yet. I gave her hers. She has a couple, I believe, that she's trying to choose from. But I'm kind of leaning a little bit more away from romance for February. I think I'm going to go a little bit more dark and twisty, whether it be a a thriller, or a horror book, something like that, just to get us away from the romance, so I don't get too overstimulated on it. That's not really the word I wanted to use, but it's the one that popped in my head. One of the books actually on my list is called Reaper Beginnings by Ellen Wolfsey. I bought it shortly after it came out, and it seemed really interesting. It caught my eye, but it's on my list to read this month. Whether it's first or not, I'm not sure yet. I can read the new Natasha Preston book, The Party. That's been on my mind to read. It sounds like it's going to be kind of like a whodunit situation, or it kind of based on what I'm gathering from other people that's read it and the back of the book and description of it. It's kind of reminding me like of a game of Clue. So that's going to be definitely interesting to read. Another one that I am thinking about reading is Keep It in the Family, which was actually recommended to me by somebody on one of my Facebook groups that I read, or not read, but I follow, and it's about book lovers and stuff like that. But I heard it's very, very dark and twisted, and it's more of like a psychological thriller. And unfortunately, from what I was told, it has a lot of incest in it, which does kind of steer me away from it a little bit, but I think I might still give it a shot. And then the last book that I'm thinking about starting with is called The Orphanage by the Lake by Daniel G. Miller. It just sounds really interesting, and it's about a 30-year-old private investigator. She's single. She gets paid to basically find someone, and finds out that she has a lot of unexplained things happening, and that she's more attached to the situation than what she originally thought she was. So it's definitely going to be interesting to read it as well. And it says it's book 1 of 2, so it's definitely going to be a little mini series at least. If I do decide to do another love story in February, it's probably going to be Love Interest by Claire Gilmore. It was actually recommended to me by, well, not me specifically, but recommended by one of the YouTubers I follow on YouTube. She reads a lot of books. She said it was really interesting, and it goes back and forth between points of view, whether it's the guy or the girl's point of view. And then you also see like text message exchanges and stuff like that. It just sounded really interesting, and I love the cover of the book. So I'm very much one of the people that judges a book by its cover, and whether or not I'm going to read it, it plays a huge part in what the book looks like. So I go a lot based off of the cover of a book. Whether it's completely plain and it's just a title, that'll draw me to it, or if it has this big, beautiful picture on the front, that'll draw me to it as well. Now, personally, I prefer like a hardcover book, but I don't like the sleeves over top of it. So if I get a hardcover book, it has to be where it's either plain on the front and just has a title, or the picture has to be on the hardcover itself. I can't have a sleeve. It drives me insane. The books that I get that have the sleeves on them, I tend to take the sleeves off and store them away until I'm done with the book, and then I will put it back on the book, and I'll put the book back on my shelf. Or I will just decide to buy the paperback version of that book. I am very much a physical book person, though. I would rather see, hold, and smell a physical book rather than actually go and read a book on my Kindle. I have a Kindle. I have probably 200 books downloaded on my Kindle waiting to be read, but I'm very much steer away from, or more away from, those type of books. Just because I prefer the physical book. I want to be able to hold it. I want to be able to see me dwindling down on the pages, stuff like that. Now, as I said, I'm my favorite genre right now is young adult thriller, and so those tend to pull me towards them. I'm trying to broaden my perspective, so if you have any book recommendations, you can comment or even send a message to me. I have a Facebook page called Bree Bears Books. You can search it there, and you can send me a message, and I'll definitely check it out, and I will add your book to my reading list, or I will just go and buy it and read it, or if I see it at my local library, I'll go get it from the library. I just said that wrong, library. um, but yeah, I absolutely love it. And I'm a huge bookworm. I have been for about 12 years now, like I said. So it's definitely going to be interesting. And I really hope to connect with more book lovers and get more of a community going, whether you follow me on Facebook, Instagram. I have an Instagram as well, also under Bree Bears Books. Or if you just follow me on YouTube here, I'm Bree Bears Books. I also am going to try to get on another podcast platform, whether that be like Spotify or something else along those lines, just to kind of broaden it. Or if you want to even send me an email, I have an email and it's breebearsbooks@gmail.com. The Bree Bears does not have an apostrophe. So definitely if you have any book recommendations, questions, anything like that, just want to get to know me, I am definitely one that responds to people. It is one of my biggest pet peeves not to respond to people. If I don't respond to you, I just haven't gotten to check my email, comments, whatever yet. But I definitely am one that will respond. And if you message me asking for a book recommendation, can't promise it's not going to be a young adult thriller. I can't promise it won't be Natasha Preston. But I will give you other recommendations as well. I'll just tell you my favorite books that I've read over the last several years, what age range you're from. If you prefer a specific genre and you put that in your email or text or whatever you send, then I will send something that I've read in that genre that I've liked. Not too much. I've not read too much on like a historical front. I'm trying to get more into that. Really, the only thing I could suggest to you if you ask me for a historical read is probably like a Holocaust or something like that. But if you ask for pretty much any sort of fictional genre, I can pretty much give you a recommendation, whether it's horror, thriller, romance, dark and twisty romance, that type of stuff. I can pretty much give you a recommendation on any of the other genres. But I'm gonna go more in depth next chapter with a book that I've picked, whether I'll probably do like a personal book that I picked for me to read, and then my also book of the month book that my mother-in-law picks for me, and I'll go more in depth about what it says it's about, and if I read any part of it, kind of a little bit of a recap of what I read in those books. I'm gonna tell you what caught my eye about the book, and then a little bit about what my least favorite part about it is. My least favorite genre right now is probably history, as you can tell, because I said I can really only talk about the Holocaust books. But also I can't really say for sure that it's my least favorite genre just because I don't have that much that I've read out of it. If I go based off of ones that I've read a lot of books about and I have to pick a least favorite genre, I don't know. They're all kind of tied for great. But I don't know, because I like religious books. I like love stories. I like dark romances. I like thrillers. I like horror. Really, I don't have a least favorite genre. I would say I have like a least favorite idea of a book. So like if I get a book and I can't get into it really fast, or if it takes me a while and I have to force myself to continue reading to actually get into the book, those are my least favorite types of books. But other than that, I don't really have a least favorite genre. But we'll dive a little bit more into that as you follow me in these chapters. I don't know if I'm going to do it once a week, once a month. I know at least for the first 2 or 3 chapters that I do with you guys, I'm going to post them kind of back to back, whether it's 2 this week and 2 next week, something like that. Or if I just do like 1 a week and then I decide I want to do 1 a month, I can slowly work my way to doing 1 a month rather than 1 a week. But I think definitely you'll get chapter 2 of my book, Bree Bears Books podcast, probably within the next couple days to a week. I would say you won't see it later than next Friday, especially if I have a day off of work. So I plan on doing this a lot in my free time, whether it's planning out what I'm going to do for the podcast, recording the podcast, whatever. You'll probably see me a lot. If you follow me on any of my social medias, whether it's Facebook, as I said, under Bree Bears Books, YouTube, Instagram, or anything like that, all under Bree Bears Books. Instagram, it's all lowercase. Facebook and YouTube, the B is capitalized in Bree Bears and the B is capitalized in books. As I said, if you email me, it's all lowercase. It's Bree Bears Books, so it's BRIBEARSBOOKS @gmail.com. And you can email me with questions, recommendations. If you would like a recommendation, you can ask me for one of those. Just if you want to get in touch with me and say hi, make a new friend, I'm open to that as well. But until next chapter, I just want to thank you again for joining me on this journey together. I hope to see you all next chapter. And remember, there is always time for another chapter. Thanks.